Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. After meeting with Indigenous leaders in Canada earlier this year, UN Special Rapporteur Jose Francisco Calais-Tsai has presented his first report to a delegation in Geneva. As Katrin Pilkington tells us, he doesn't think Indigenous people are being treated equally.
Speaking to the UN Council of Human Rights, Tsai said governments do not give enough money to Indigenous-led climate initiatives and do not see Indigenous peoples as equal stakeholders. Tsai said climate strategies must include Indigenous leadership.
The most biodiverse and best preserved lands, forests and shores in this planet are those that have been stewarded by Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples' scientific knowledge is critical to solving the biodiversity loss and climate change crisis.
First Nations, Métis, and Inuit stewardship programs received just a sliver of the $100 billion allocated to clean growth and climate action since 2015. Chief Sean Smith of the Kwanlin Dun First Nation has led a number of stewardship initiatives in the Yukon. He says the current level of funding is a drop in the bucket compared to what's needed.
That they say First Nations are going to help lead us. First Nations are going to help us with creating balance, to create those opportunities in regards to dealing with climate change and the impacts of that. And so they want this, so they say they want this, but do they put that into their practice?
Brandy Mays is the lead for KDFN's stewardship program.
You know, you bring people into these programs and the land heals. You know, we've had a lot of hurt and a lot of social impacts that have happened to our people. But you bring them into these programs, they have a lot of skills that they don't realize that they have.
Mays says not everyone is aware of just how much work KDFN land stewards do. She said these programs should be funded to the same extent that academics are.
You're learning everything from fish biology to, to traditional knowledge to, all about the animals, the plants, animals, the medicine, the air, what's happening. You're doing the water sampling and soil sampling.
The federal government has pledged to continue to grow Guardian programming in Canada. Katrin Pilkington, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Hay River's healthcare workers have voted in favor of strike action if a deal cannot be negotiated with the Hay River Health and Social Services Authority. They say workers want to be treated the same as GNWT workers and that there are glaring differences between the two collective agreements.
There isn't the same benefits and in some cases the economics aren't the same. I think this employer needs to wake up a bit, give their head a shake, and give these workers what they deserve. They need to be equal to what the GNWT is.
Thunstrom added that in the event of a strike, critical services will not be disrupted. She says healthcare professionals care deeply about the safety of the community. A family in Pangnuk 2 has been without power for 2 weeks. Power poles were damaged after hurricane-force winds hit the community. Jenna Kakasik says she has small children who are disabled and she's been struggling to keep them warm. She also says she has no water in the house.
For 8 days, we waited in our home, expecting someone to connect our power line. It was only finally on the 8th or 7th day that I was told that I'm responsible for the damages. So I was kind of shocked. I was very shocked at that time because I had waited with my small children, 2 with severe disabilities in my home, expecting someone to come and fix it, and then hearing that I have to fix it on my own. It was very shocking at the time.
Kakasik says she has applied for emergency funds from the Nunavut Housing Corporation, but has yet to hear back about her application. She says they're surviving with power generators to keep the furnace going, but it doesn't always work. Goodlook Energy Corporation says Kakasik will have to repair the power pole herself before power can be reconnected. For the first time in its history, an Inuk will be running Canadian North. The airline has named Shelley DeCarrier from Kuujjuaq as its interim president and CEO effective immediately. The company announced the changes yesterday evening, thanking former executive Michael Rodnick for his contributions. The company says the move is a result of thoughtful deliberation aimed at positioning Canadian North for continued success. Rodnick started the role only about a year and a half ago in July 2022. When asked if he was fired, he said he would call it a mutual separation and gave high praise for Dakaria and board chair Johnny Adams.
My history in the aviation industry has been one of coming into organizations and getting them on the right foot and then moving on to the next challenge. The company is in excellent shape. Very pleased with the work and the team that we assembled and what we were collectively able to accomplish. And now the continuation moves forward with Shelley at the helm, and I'll move on to my next assignment and my next role.
Rodnick says he plans to spend some time with his wife and children before making another career move, but he expects he'll keep working in the aviation sector. The Yukon government is facing heat over planned upgrades to the Skagway dock. The so-called Marine Services platform will cost around $44 million. The government says the project is vital to the future of mining in the Yukon, but the NDP isn't convinced. Chris Windier has that story.
On Monday, NDP leader Kate White accused the Liberals of cannibalizing social programs to pay for the dock. The government plans to spend $21 million this fiscal year on the project. White says that is almost exactly the figure the government plans to cut from 3 departments. Not only that, White says, there's also the question of who will even use this dock. The Minto copper mine is now closed, and any other projects that might use the facility are years away from production. Premier Ranj Pillay says the upgrades are needed even without users in place. That's because would-be miners still need to have access to facilities to attract investment. Pillay denied the government is cutting social spending. He says it is routine for governments to move department spending to future years, and he accused the NDP of being anti-mining. Chris Windier, CBC News, Whitehorse.
People in Sunny Rayak are being told to boil their water before consuming it. The government of Nunavut released a notice today. It says a bacteria called total coliform was found in the water during a routine test. Water that's going to be consumed for things like drinking, making formula for babies, washing fruits and vegetables, or brushing teeth must be brought to a rolling boil for at least 1 minute. This will kill bacteria and any other organisms in the water. The notice says you don't need to boil water for other uses like hand washing and bathing. It does not say how long the boil and water advisory will be in place. Increases in the cost of living eased a little last month. The annual rate of inflation slowed to 3.8% in September after jumping to 4% in August. That's going to keep interest rates high, which is bad news for borrowers, especially those with low credit scores. Philippe de Montigny has that story.
Between high grocery bills and soaring rent, Cesar Ramirez was already feeling squeezed. Then he had to send money to his mom in Mexico after she was in an accident.
She does have a insurance, but it didn't cover everything that had to be covered in the surgeries, and it was a big amount.
The Toronto resident took out a personal loan, owing more than $22,000 at a whopping 29.9% interest rate.
I was feeling so overwhelmed. I felt like I had no escape from this. I felt like there was no way out.
He turned to credit counseling, and he's not alone.
We're in a cost of living crisis and a high cost of credit crisis, so it's growing exponentially.
But a signal now inflation may be easing, down from 4% in August to 3.8% in September. That's largely thanks to slowing food inflation, lower airfares, and stabilizing prices of goods like cars and appliances. But that doesn't mean Canadians will see relief.
We're not seeing any give back from that previous inflation. So for a lot of Canadians, these prices are still going to feel very high.
While inflation is heading in the right direction, it's still nearly twice the Bank of Canada's 2% target. Now the big question, will it raise interest rates again next week or stay put? Most economists are expecting the central bank to hold its key rate at 5%. Little consolation for borrowers relying on high-interest loans to stay afloat. Payday loans, for example, can run up to 400% annually.
They go to a high interest or payday lender just to bridge that gap for a month, and it's a treadmill that they really can't get off.
Ottawa promised to crack down on predatory lending in its latest budget, capping interest that can be charged as the cost of living crisis drags on. Philippe de Montigny, CBC News, Toronto.
Increased cruise ship traffic and the Canadian High Arctic Research Station mean more and more visitors are arriving in Cambridge Bay. And there's a lack of chefs to help keep them fed. So, Nunavut Arctic College is looking to train some locally. The college is now offering a culinary arts program to help fill the gap. It's a 2-year program that teaches things like food preparation, kitchen safety, butchering, and baking. It also incorporates Inuit culture and traditional foods. Michelle Vanderbrink is a student in the program.
And also it keeps our Inuit in locally, like they come in from the Kitchakmute and they don't have to go elsewhere to go to school. Like Tasha went away for school for a bit for her program.
This isn't the first time cooking skills have been taught at the college in Cambridge Bay. In the past, a 6-week camp cook program and a culinary arts certificate program were offered. This is, though, the first time students will be able to graduate as a Red Seal chef with a post-secondary diploma. A glass-blowing studio in Whitehorse is looking for ways to divert glass waste from the landfill. It's working with Raven Recycling to reuse and reduce glass jars and wine bottles. The owners of Lumel have just bought a new glass-making furnace to melt recycled glass. The glass-blowing studio has been in operation for 7 years now. Mel Baker-Johnson says there's a lot of glass going to the landfill in the Yukon.
There's a huge issue in Yukon, as there are in many jurisdictions, where a lot of the glass today, hundreds of tons, ends up being in the landfill. And we're looking at ways with Raven Recenter to divert some of that. We're working on a project of scale, so we're trying it out to see what can be done, and then we're developing plans for what could be done with more time and effort.
Baker-Johnson says Lumel doesn't have the space for people dropping off bottles at their studio, but they are accepting a small number of clean jars and bottles that they can melt if people have a project in mind. It takes a lot of heat and propane to melt the glass, almost 4 hours in the oven. Once melted, it's perfect for using in glass art projects like Christmas ornaments. Calling all Beaufort Delta storytellers. If you have a story to tell, there's a chance it could end up published for local schools. Education officials will be touring communities soon to find the tales. The CBC's Des Loreen has more.
The Beaufort Delta Divisional Educational Council put out a call last week. They want people to share their northern experiences. They could even be local legends or traditional stories. Steve Dagger is the literacy programs consultant with BDEC. He says students really connect with local stories.
You could see the reaction. It was a visceral reaction. And so I know the BDEC office wants to get more of those. And so, I mean, that is my mission, to get them into the class.
Jerry Kassoon has been telling stories his whole life. He hopes that students will be raised like he was, listening to local storytellers.
And you know, they sit there and they tell stories and they talk in our language. They talk Inuvialuktun. They talk, they tell stories. I'm that little boy sitting in the corner and they laugh. I don't understand what they're talking about, but I laugh too because it's got to be a good story, right?
Kassoon encourages people in the communities to reach out to the schools. Dagger says the goal is to have local illustrators pair with the storytellers. Des Loreen, CBC News, Inuvik.
Johnny wanted to go back home. It was 1,000 kilometers away. They forced him to go to the Indian residential school. More than 150,000 of us children had to go. They wanted to change us.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name.
Hallowed be your name.
Thy kingdom come,
Thy kingdom come,
thy will be done.
Thy will be done. Kill the Indian and the child. It's been called cultural genocide. I survived residential school. My brother Johnny did not.
Chani Wenjack was one of thousands of children who died due to Canada's residential school system. More than 80,000 survivors and their families still live with its legacy today.
Things are too good. I'm just scared that things will be taken away.
Think of the education they will receive.
You're going to see things you never forget.
There is no way that we are going to give up when we are threatened with cultural genocide.
Sometimes it's the beautiful things that hurt the most to remember.
You promise me that you won't look back. You are our tomorrow.
A lot happens overnight.
Hey, good morning, Heather.
Hey, good morning. How are you today? We're ready to go when you need to know. Good morning. I'm Heather Hiscox. We begin with breaking news, what we're learning from it.
Like you see from behind us here, how big the fire is.
Your connection goes back decades.
You're giving me the hard questions.
Yep. The heroes and the helpers.
That is what we're here for.
I found Canadians. I'm Heather Hiscox. Start your day with us on CBC Morning Live.
Driving impaired destroys lives. A message from Mad Canada.
Keeping secrets, are you?
No, sir.
It's like any man. On the run.
Whatever you're gonna do, you need to do it now.
Hang on, guys. I'm sure you'll get some action, promise?
We were failed by history.
It's really important that we own our stories.
Every week, the issues that matter to Canadians.
These are acts of desperation.
Connecting politics to people.
Some people have lost everything.
Join me for Rosemary Barton Live.
Well, we had planned to go to the North Arm to
Two Yellowknife men who spent several cold nights out on Great Slave Lake say they are grateful for the searchers who helped bring them home. Sam Roberts and Mark Elson spent 3 days lost on the shores of Great Slave Lake without any food or shelter. They shared their survival story with the CBC's Hillary Bird.
Well, we had planned to go to the North Arm to because Mark is going to go fishing for his restaurant. So we were going to go out and check out a few spots and just come back home. But somehow or another, we just got distracted and foggy, and we just got disoriented, and we ended up over on the east side of the lake.
We had no idea that we crossed over to the Detta side and headed to the East Arm. Like, it was, and when we found out, it was like, oh my God. But the next day, like after spent the first night and, the smoke lifted and stuff, and it was like, where are we? And it felt like from the time that the smoke came till then, it was just a haze. Like, you can't remember how you got there, right? It was like someone picked us up and just plopped us down. What do we do for food? Well, the first night, so I had 2 pepperoni sticks and a bag of peanuts in my bag. So the first night we each had a pepperoni stick. So that's what we had for the first night. And the second day, we waited until like evening time to eat the peanuts because we said we got to wait because we have no food. So we wait till we're really, really hungry. So that's what we did. And, first time in my life I ever ate peanuts one at a time.
On the second last island that we camped on, there was spruce chickens on the island, so we killed one over the rock, but we had to use our paddle to finish them off. So
you just threw a rock at it and you got it.
But that was after like 60 rocks, right? Like our aim is not very good. We kind of knew that wherever we were, it wasn't where we were supposed to be. So they don't know where we are, so hopefully eventually they'll realize like they're not in the area where they should be, so they'll, get the big big boys in with the grid and start gridding the whole lake, and then, we would be found eventually. When you're in a situation like that, like it's easy for your mind to start slipping into dark areas, so you need to be strong and keep talking to yourself to say that things are okay, and even if it is only a couple of days, right? Like it gets a little challenging sometimes mentally to do that.
I didn't really mind because I knew I was safe, right? So, but we moved off that last island, and I said to Mark, I said, let's go down a little further. I said, we might find a cabin or something.
You kept moving.
Yeah, so we went down, but we were going to go around the corner, but I tucked out around, and I said, no, we're not going to make it. So then we went back in again, and we went ashore, and we found a cabin. We figured we were going to have it made. Mark said to me, we're going to have some sleep tonight. And all of a sudden, the plane showed up. So, everything was canceled, right?
So, Air actually seen us first. When they finally seen us, they just kept circling us, right? And then, like I said to Sam, okay, he's going to have to go home soon because he's going to run out of fuel. So he came down low and he rocked his plane to say, we'll see you later kind of a thing. And then we went back up to the cabin, and Sam said, man, like I hear a boat. So I went back down to the boat, and you could hear it on the opposite side of the island. And it was like going and coming, and it was like, it's not a boat, it's too loud. And then when that Hercules came around, it was like, the big boys are here. And it was like, we're safe now, And the feeling for me was like, when I seen that Hercules, it was almost like seeing your firstborn. It was, the joy was overwhelming inside. It was pretty cool when that happened.
They say they learned not to take anything for granted, and they're also sharing the same advice as one of the search and rescue teams that helped bring them home. Be prepared, no matter how short your trip is or how well you know your route.
Just like if you drive out of Yellowknife in the wintertime, you're packing your winter gear and you're packing your clothes and you have a full tank of gas just in case. And I think it's the same thing on the water, making sure you've left a good trip plan, somebody knows where you're going. There's all the inReaches and spots and sat phones and cell phones and VHF radios, and there's all the technology out there. If you don't have it, somebody in your world probably does, to borrow. If you want to borrow for an afternoon, it can make the difference.
A Health Canada survey suggests almost 20% of Canadians will experience alcohol use disorder in their lifetime. And while effective treatments exist, many people aren't getting the help they need. As Tashana Reed tells us, new Canadian guidelines are hoping to change that.
It's no secret, experts say, Canada has a drinking problem and treatment is failing.
95 to 99% of Canadians do not get effective medications for the treatment of craving for alcohol or medications that can help prevent a relapse.
Now, for the first time, guidelines for Canadian doctors on treating alcohol use disorder, which is the ongoing use or difficulty controlling drinking despite consequences. It includes a list of questions doctors should routinely be asking patients, like do you spend a lot of time drinking or recovering from drinking? And the most effective drug treatments for withdrawal or ongoing care, but also what to avoid.
In some patients, we actually see an increase in alcohol use as a result of antidepressant medication.
There's also a caution around prescribing antidepressants known as SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, for alcohol use disorder. When mixed with alcohol, these medications may cause some people to drink even more.
Most people don't necessarily think of alcohol as a drug in the sense of interacting with other drugs.
That's what happened to Lynn. Her case highlighted in the Canadian Medical Association Journal.
Started drinking more, started drinking earlier.
CBC News has agreed to not identify Lynn as she fears stigma around alcohol addiction could harm her business. During the pandemic, she was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. Her doctor prescribed an SSRI antidepressant, but she was also using alcohol.
As I was increasing my dosage, I was also increasing my alcohol consumption.
Lynn checked herself into a detox program and is nearly 1 year sober.
Don't be scared to make that first step.
Experts say they hope this new guidance will help doctors better identify people who need help and get them the care they need sooner. Tashana Reid, CBC News, Toronto.
It was a super foggy day in Yellowknife today. It sat like a blanket over the city. Environment Canada says it should start to clear around midnight. It sure made it feel like fall out there, but snow is expected later this week. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, you can always go to our website, cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
When I arrived in Canada, there were not many women who looked like me. Not everyone was welcoming. But my husband made a new life here in this distant country. And I thought here I could belong. And many others could too. As the years went on, our town flourished. Our community worked together and took care of each other. Our children grew up with a true sense of belonging. Here in Baldi, we built our home, and we wanted others to do the same.
Established by South Asian immigrants in 1917, the mill town of Baldi, British Columbia was one of Canada's first inclusive multicultural communities.
Keeping secrets, are you? No, sir. Just like any man. Starting new. On the run.
Whatever you're gonna do, you need to do it now.
Hang on, guys. I'm sure you'll get some action.
Promise?
Putting on that apron brings me to tears. Hey!
This is an epic fail.
Where are the pecans? I don't see the pecans.
The stones. The beetles. I did a test. What? We were failed by history. Look where we are, under that legacy.
It's really important that we own our stories.
Just remain calm. Grab the head.
You grab the head. Have you ever dealt with something like this before?
No.
It's on me now.
Animal Control. Watch all episodes now.
It was awesome. It was great.
I loved it.
Yeah, good show.
With the comedy in, with the history.
He was really funny.
Nailed it. It was great.
Still Standing. Watch free on CBC Gem.
I was homeschooled as a child. You can only be as smart as your mom. That's it.
Gross.
Okay, cool.
I love it.